Hey y'all, it's just Jennifer. Thank you for joining me for another Book Talk Tuesday. I only have a few books to talk to you about today because I didn't get as much reading done as I did last week because, last week I was talking about 2 weeks worth in one book talk. But today, it's just 1 week's worth, and so there's not as many books, but I'm still really excited to share what I've read with y'all. So the first one I want to start out with is In Harm's Way by Irene, Hannon, and I mentioned this last week that I had just started it and I was very intrigued by it and I was curious to see what was going on and if my idea was correct. My hunch was wrong, but I was glad that it was wrong. I think this actually went a whole lot better than I had anticipated. About midway through the novel, you kind of get a hint of where she's going, and it's incredible. So just to remind you, just in case you didn't watch last week or you don't remember, In Harm's Way is about a woman named Rachel who finds a Raggedy Ann doll in the parking lot of a restaurant. And when she touches it, she just becomes incredibly terrified, and she can't figure out why. But she decides to go to the authorities and report it anyway, just in case. And so the FBI agent that she meets with is named Nick Bradley, and he sees her reaction to this doll, and it's obvious that she's not faking it, but he just kind of waves it off, and he doesn't really think much of it, but he ends up discovering a connection between her and the doll. And I really don't want to give it away. I don't want to give away spoilers, but it was an incredible twist, and Irene Hannon did it so well. And what I thought was interesting about this one is there's not much of an investigation until about halfway through, because Nick just kind of, brushes it off. And his friend is married to a psychologist, and the psychologist has a reasonable explanation for this fear that Rachel has. Because apparently some psychologists had discovered that sometimes when you touch an object, it can bring back a subconscious memory, and that's what she thought was happening to Rachel. And Rachel accepted that theory because Rachel was a foster child, and she was orphaned at a very young age, and she thought that that was extremely possible. And so it kind of dives into her romance with Nick a little bit, and then about midway through, something happens that kind of changes things, and they begin to take this doll a little bit more seriously. And like I said, I don't want to give it away, but Irene really manages to up the suspense because you see the villain's point of view, and the villain begins to get a little bit worried and starts making these plans about what's going to happen just in case someone finds out. And so you're kind of freaking out, wondering what's going to happen to Rachel, and it was really good. Like I said last week, this is the last book in a series. It's her Heroes of Quantico series. I highly recommend you read it. The first one is on Kindle Unlimited, so if you have Kindle Unlimited, that's a great way to get started, because that's actually how I got started with this series. I read the first one on Kindle Unlimited, and I was hooked, and I had to go read the other two. I can't remember the other two's names right off the bat, so let me look. Okay, the first one is called Against All Odds, and that one was really good because it was about these two men. They had to go protect a diplomat's daughter because there was a death threat against her, and that one was really interesting. The second one is called An Eye for an Eye, and this man meets his childhood sweetheart just randomly, and they're standing there talking at a park, and someone tries to shoot them, and so they're trying to figure out who the actual target was and why, and it was incredible. So I highly recommend this series. Really just this author. You cannot go wrong with Irene Hannon. If you missed last week's video and you want to know more about Irene Hannon, go check out last week's video, because I pretty much just sang her praises for 20 minutes. But she's really good because she writes not just romantic suspense but also contemporary romance, and she's really good. The second book that I read last week was called Running Target by Elizabeth Goddard. And this is another love-inspired suspense book, and it came out in May of 2019, so you probably won't see this at bookstores anymore. It should be, however, on Amazon Kindle. This book is part of a series I found out after I started reading it, but I was still able to follow it. It was very interesting. It's about an FBI agent who comes home to try to find out who murdered her sister. She ends up running into her ex-boyfriend, who is a homicide detective. No, this is the wrong one. That was a book that I told y'all about last week. This book is way more interesting than that one, because this one is about a deputy who runs across a boat filled with illegal weapons. And the men on the boat start shooting at her and her partner, and she narrowly escapes. And then as she's running, she runs into her ex-boyfriend, who is a DEA agent, the Drug Enforcement Agency. And so they're running from these men, and they're really after the ex-boyfriend, but she unintentionally crossed their paths. And it was really good. It had a lot of suspense. The fact that her and the hero have history together made the fast timeline much more believable, because I think it was just like a matter of a few days. And so when the ending came, I wasn't sitting there like, really? Because I could believe it. It was believable. But this was really good. I highly recommend it. I also read, and this was on Kindle, so I can't really like show it to you because it's not going to show up really well. I got it from Kindle Unlimited. It was called the Christmas Heirloom Collection. And it has 4 novellas in it from Kristi and Hunter, Karen Witemeyer. I'm probably going to pronounce this author's name wrong. I've never read anything by her before. Sarah Loudin Thomas, maybe? Is that how you pronounce her name? And the last one was by Becky Wade. And as you can probably guess from the title, all 4 of them were connected by this heirloom brooch that was passed down from woman to woman in the family. And the first one, Regency Romance by Kristi and Hunter, and it was called A Legacy of Love, which is also a separate ebook that you can just get for 99 cents. Anything that you pick up by Kristi and Hunter is going to be good. This one was no exception, and I was really excited about it because it had a character from Kristi's Haven Manor series. So if you've read her Haven Manor series, you want to read the Christmas Heirloom Collection and all those novellas, because it features a character that was a child in the first book. If I remember correctly, the first book was A Defense of Honor, and it featured Kit and Graham. And if those names sound familiar to you, the name Sarah probably sounds familiar to you. And it's about Sarah. So you want to read it. It was really good. The second book was by Karen Witemeyer. And it was a very interesting take on Ruth and Boaz. Like it was almost like a retelling of that story, but a little bit different. Ruth is a widow in the late 1800s who moves to a new town in search of work. And instead of Naomi being her mother-in-law, Naomi is actually her daughter. And Bo, or his full name is Beauregard, but he's called Bo for short, owns this resort. And he also becomes Ruth's landlord and helps her out some. And it was a really good story. Whenever I read a Christmas story, I always look for something that's very heartwarming and kind of points me back to the whole reason for Christmas. And I felt like Karen Witemeyer definitely did that with her story. The other 2 stories were good. I did not like them as much. But I'm like a die-hard Karen Witemeyer fan and a die-hard Kristi and Hunter fan. So that's probably why. The third one by Sarah Loudin Thomas. I'm probably saying her name wrong. I'm sorry. It was set in the 50s. And I haven't really read anything set in the 50s. So that was different. And I like that. It was a very interesting era. It was connected to one of her books, which did make me want to go read that book. It was very interesting, and it was set in West Virginia, and it was about a woman who wanted to be a gunsmith, and that was a pretty good story. I just did not like it as much as the other ones, and the last one by Becky Wade was connected to the Bradford Sisters series. So if you love the Bradford Sisters series, you probably met Maddie, who is Britt's friend and works with her in her chocolate shop, and it was about her. And it was pretty good too. Like I said, I'm just diehard Kristi and Hunter and Karen Witemeyer fan. So those stories just really stole my heart, and nothing could eclipse them. So I highly recommend that collection. It was really good. All four of them are also available in separate ebooks. Now, the Karen Witemeyer one is combined in a collection with the Archer Brothers story. I think it's called like a Texas Christmas or something. I ended up buying it. I had a gift card and it was 99 cents. So I thought, why not? So I haven't read the Archer Brother story yet. I'm really excited though because I love her Archer Brother series. It was actually the first Karen Witemeyer series I ever read. And it's what made me a fan of her to begin with. So I'm very excited to read that. So that is on my TBR. Something else that's on my TBR is this book by Irene Hannon. It's called Deadly Pursuit. And it is about a social worker, Allison, who is being stalked. And this guy right here, his name is Mitch. He's a detective and he works with Allison's brother Cole. And they're trying to stop the stalker. And I'm really excited to read this one. Because it's the middle of a series and I got impatient and I managed to get my hands on the third one before this one. I went ahead and read the third one, which was good. It was really good. I recommend that one too. Because like I said, pretty much anything Irene Hannon is a win. There's also another love-inspired one that I haven't read yet that I left all the way over there for some reason. Oh, I got it mixed up with another one. Thought I'd already read it, but it's by Maggie K. Black and it's called Undercover Holiday Fiance, and so I'm very intrigued about that one. I'm also really into Christmas books right now. I love Christmas books, and sometimes I will read them other times of the year because I can and no one can stop me. But they're more fun around Christmas, especially when the characters are cold and they're in the snow. So there's just something about reading a really good story like that with like a cup of hot chocolate, snuggled under the blanket. Of course, with me living in North Georgia, we don't really get a whole lot of snow. So I like to live vicariously through other people. But that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. If you missed my blog post on Friday, I did a book review on Corny Misfortune by Regina Jennings. And it's a really good, really fun historical romance. It's about a female Pinkerton detective and a preacher who comes to a mining town to win souls. There's a lot of misunderstandings in there. There's some comedic elements, especially with the heroine's cousins, that cause a lot of problems with the heroine's investigation. So that was really good. If you missed that, you can go to my website and check that out. There should also be a link on my timeline, so you can always click that. This Friday, I will be posting a review of The Thief of Blackfriars Lane by Michelle Greep. It's another historical romance set in Victoria, England, and Michelle Greep described it as Zootopia without the animals. And I think that's a pretty fair assessment. It was a really good book. Had like a bumbling police officer and a con woman. And so that was really interesting. And it was a really good story. Very heartwarming. It definitely had its surprises. Had its twists and turns. Don't want to give anything away, of course, because it threw me off. I love when a book surprises me. Like, I always feel smart when I figure stuff out, but I also love when an author is able to take me by surprise. But anyways, so thank you again for joining me tonight, and I will see you next Wednesday.